Hello guys, welcome you all to Sunya IAS. Today's topic for mains article discussion is G20 and G20 Delhi Summit 2023 that happened all over in India. You would be seeing that G20 was celebrated just like a festival. On the roads, on the corners, everywhere there was G20 posters. And why not? India was leading the Trioca this time and it was the 18th G20 Summit. G20 is group of 20 countries, 19 countries particularly, plus European Union. That's what we call G20. It's a premier forum for economic discussions such as financial stability, how to maintain a global order of financial stability, coordination with IMF, World Bank, different countries, coordination between developed and developing nations. Okay, so it is also a multilateral platform for financial discussions. Recently, one major development that has happened to it is that African Union has also been included as a part of G20. We'll talk about it also. What are the achievements? What new declarations we are committing for green financing, for the climate change also. So right now, what is happening with G20? It is important because first of all, India has assumed the leadership position with the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. More than that, now because it was established particularly for addressing the financial crisis situation, but it has widened its zone, its horizon of working, maintaining the international relations, talking about the international issues also, resolving them also. Therefore, this platform is very important for the mains examination and for the prelims also. In prelims 2020, they have asked a direct question about the membership of G20. Therefore, we are expecting what could be the outcome, significance and importance for India. What were the opportunities and expectations from the India? What had been the challenges and what we have achieved in the G20 Delhi Summit or Delhi Declaration of the G20. So let's start. Formation of G20. Basically, the inception was against the Asian financial crisis. 1999. And during its inception, basically it was that only finance minister and central bank governors will meet and they will decide about the financial stability. Asian financial crisis 1999. Understand that there are certain bodies, which were formed against some economic crisis, against some situation. Okay, for example, in the backdrop of oil crisis or energy crisis, G7 was formed. Okay, similarly this body was formed against Asian financial crisis. Now what has happened that in 2008, 2009, this body showcased that not only finance minister or central bank governor should be meeting because it is able to tackle the problems very effectively. Therefore, the head of the states were included into these meetings. Therefore, now it is a premier forum for economic discussions all over the world, including the multilateral aspect of the discussions, resolving multilaterally the problems of the world related to the finance and all the coordination. So let's talk about the objectives. What are the objectives? First, strengthen global architecture. We have to strengthen the global architecture. Committed for policy coordination amongst the countries, as I told you, developed and developing nations. From them, policy coordination. Financial regulations. If I talk about financial regulation, Financial Stability Board, it formed the Financial Stability Board. This is the most important function. Promote financial regulations. This resolved the problem in 2008 crisis also. Aid to the most vulnerable nations. Here the role of India is very important. Do try to understand. Aid to the most vulnerable nations. We will discuss about it, how G20 effectively led to the solution of problem of vaccination during the COVID pandemic also. Most, 70% of vaccination drive by 2022 was achieved by G20 nations. Moreover, India wants to be the voice of global south. Although right now India is into the club of major powers, whether we are talking about Quad, whether we are talking about Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, but still India as a leader of global south wants to raise the voice where? About multilateralism. In green financing, let's talk about that also. Inclusive growth. If we are talking about inclusive growth, then we must adhere to the responsibility of the developed nations towards developing countries. Amidst climate change, amidst the crisis of Ukraine versus Russia, climate change, if you are talking about environment sustainability, India is, putting its reinforced demand for green financing that is driven by public-private partnerships, as well as emphasizing upon low per capita energy consumption and CO2 consumption of global south. Try to understand this point. Low energy consumption, low per capita, okay, or low CO2 consumption of global south. Therefore, already the developed nation, what funds they have committed, if we are talking about financial stability, it is not just about maintaining their economies or not letting the economies, default, just like Sri Lanka. You have, understanding the doom sloop, what has happened over there. So, ripple effects in the globalized world, all the economies are coupled, interlinked. So, if the Fed is changing their policies, its impact will be seen on India also. If our neighbor country, for example, Sri Lanka, a financial crisis is happening, its impact will be there on India also. So therefore, India wants to highlight that, warnings of inequitable burden sharing, mitigation and adaptation from the developed nation should be addressed properly. They should take the responsibility of funding the developing nations. Then they can expect certain outcomes with regard to climate change also. Okay. So let's understand the G20 structure. So guys, here, first of all, let's understand about the presidency. G20 does not have a permanent secretariat. It is, presidency is on the rotational basis amongst its own members chosen from different groupings of the countries. From the 20 members, the presidency will be rotating. Understand that it does not have a permanent secretariat. See, understand that this is also important point. We'll understand that this is a criticism of G20 in a way, that it is a self-appointed forum for economic discussions because it is giving, results. Therefore, this forum is so valuable. Otherwise, it is not backed by any treaty. There is no legal framework governing this G20 structure. You're getting this point. Therefore, no permanent secretariat. Just like G7 or G8. Here, it's also, there is no permanent secretariat. Here, what we have Sherpa track. Sherpa track, it means that Sherpas are the representative of the leaders. They are the emissaries of the leaders. Okay, they represent their leader. For example, from India, if we have appointed a Sherpa, it means that the head of the leader's representative. They work throughout the year. Understand that G20 meet, okay, it is for few days. Under it, different kinds of meetings will be happening. But throughout the year, whatever discussions, whatever decisions we have taken related to socio-economic point of view, health, environment, okay, climate change. So on these policies, whatever commitments the countries have given, Sherpas will be negotiating it through the dialogue throughout the year and results will be delivered. Finance track. You understand, for the inception, I have told you, the finance ministers, particularly of different countries, finance ministers, and in the case of India, it is RBI or central bank governors, will be discussing financial issues governing different countries, maintaining financial stability, okay, international financial stability, the architecture that governs them. Then engagement groups. See, the structure is very good. Here we are talking about engagement of different stakeholders. This point you can use in ethics also, that yes, in G20 as a platform, not only the leaders or the heads of state, their representatives talk, but different engagement groups are involved. Here, for example, non-government organizations, environmentalists, different kind of think tanks, they are also engaged to present their expert advice, to provide different kinds of solutions. In engagement group, what happens that, for example, World Economic Forum, you understand, okay, World Economic Forum. Similarly, here what we talk about, certain meetings on the sideline happens, just like B20 or Business 20 meeting, representing the businesses of different countries. Labor 20, labor laws, L20, T20, it's not match T20, it's about think tank 20, for bringing the different ideas, innovative solutions to the problems. So these are the meetings happening on the sidelines in the G20 structure. Here you understand about rotation of the presidency, if I'm talking Troika. This word is important for the prelims also. In this Troika, 3 members are involved. Okay, 3 members. The immediate president, that is India, the past president, that was Indonesia, and the future host, that will be Brazil. And after the Brazil, we have South Africa. After the Brazil, we have South Africa. Here also you will find that India, Brazil, South Africa. IBSA is also an organization, IBSA. India, Brazil, South Africa. So previously Indonesia was there, right now India, and 2024 will be with Brazil. Getting this point? So let's move ahead and also understand the significance of G20. It represents as an important bloc because G20, the members represent 85% of global GDP. 85% of global GDP it represents. And if I talk about the world trade, what is happening, it is 75% of world trade. Understand, whenever we are talking about any block, any grouping, then we are also understanding the economic prowess, the territorial prowess of that group. Here, it represents a population, 2/3 of global population. You understand? 85% of global GDP, 75% of world trade. Such a big block it is. Okay. And 2/3 of global population. Maintaining global order. Into this global order, you need to understand that G20 policies influence the different countries' economic prospects also. Countries' economic architecture, economic policies. Therefore, global politics is affected by the G20. Global balance of power. It promotes equitable distribution of power. Okay. Just understand that the groups just like G7 or even UNSC, for example, UNSC, P5 members have veto power, whereas in G20 we do not have such thing as veto power. It promotes equitable distribution of power between developed and developing nation also. Addresses current issues. Okay. Here something like Global Smart City Alliance for technology governance. Resolving plastic problems also. They are talking about addressing current issues. Smart Cities Alliance. Everything is Global Smart Cities Alliance for technology governance. Resolving plastic problems. Russia-Ukraine crisis. Russia-Ukraine crisis. So these are the situations. You're understanding. Taming financial crisis. It is capable Of course, it is the most important objective of it, taming financial crisis. It has established Financial Stability Board, FSB, I told you. Financial Stability Board that resolved the problem of 2008 financial crisis, 2007-2008 financial crisis. And then let's understand, to tackle the global issues, global issues, we are just elaborating upon, this taming financial, addressing current issues. What are the global issues of importance? Rising protectionism, US and China on the currency war, trade war, that are impacting the financial architecture of the global order. Therefore, rising protectionism, solving the problem of US China situation, or you can look at the peace process, Russia Ukraine crisis, problem of terrorism. You understand that if you are talking about the economic prospect or the growth prospect, it is interlinked with security also. Nearshoring, the new word that is being used, by the finance minister, external affairs minister, is the nearshoring. The friendly countries are partnering. Okay, so world order has been changing from multilateral to plurilateral to minilateral right now, and into this minilateralism we are promoting not just the economic efficiency but also the security. So hence these things are very important, which are the achievements of G20 to tackle the global issues on the terrorism that has a direct bearing on the economic growth also. Greater representation, we have talked about it so much so that right now African Union has been included as a part of G20. Previously the organizations had Western hegemony or Western interest in the form of industrialized nations. For example, group of 7 you find, okay, G7. This G20 represents a very balanced perspective. Still it is skewed, I do understand, still it is skewed, but still it has greater representation of developing nations and industrialized nations. Global investment, in the backdrop of sliding FDI globally it is reducing, or in the developed nations the inflation rate is very high. We have to tackle those problems also. So it is able to talk about these issues, address these issues directly. Economic relief, what happened during the COVID times, a lot of debt was there on the developing nations, from the developed nations, because we are in a forum where engagement, where dialogues can happen. Okay, so different debt reliefs were given in the time of pandemic when their economies were not working. Climate change, green financing, and CBDR, what we talk about, CBDR, combined but differentiated responsibilities. Here also the solution will come. Vaccination, by 2022, the vaccination, 70% of vaccination drive, they have said that they will be covering the 70% of vaccination drive. Let's also understand about significance of G20 for India. So first is platform to globalize. Here the globalization of issues are happening. Just understand, this is actually very important point, platform to globalize. Any issue you bring to this platform, it will be globalized. Whether we are talking about the technology, most important topic for the examination and for the India is data for development. This has been the agenda for India. There was a Osaka track declaration of G20 in 2019. 2019 meeting of G20 was held in Osaka, in Japan. Osaka track declaration talked about free flow of data, which India was saying that I want to protect my data sovereignty, nothing at the cost of data sovereignty. Therefore, globalization of these issues. India is a country where data is generated with lot of velocity, lot of veracity, lot of volume. So data is the new oil right now, and we need to protect it because it is being cartelized by the developed nations, generated into the developing nation, but cartelized by the developed nations. Hence, this is the platform to globalize this issue. And India is always saying that data for development, we are ready to go for it, but not just free flow of data. Part of globalization. Okay. See, India is the new guru of globalization. We are presenting our own brand of globalization in the form of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The India's voice has become pragmatic, practical what I am talking about. It is not against globalization, but India is aligning its self-interest with the global interest. And that needs to be aligned. Pragmatic growth, pragmatic foreign policy, India is achieving. And here, as a part of globalization, because G20 is the largest economic bloc, and if India is leading its presidency, then we are part of globalization, our own globalization, with the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Okay, one earth, one family, one future. Opportunity to bilateral meetings. What happens, you understand in general, whenever there is large group meetings, it all, for example, even if it is SCO, it is G20, there is always chance for bilateral meetings. For example, in the Indonesia, we studied that, previous meeting was there in the Indonesia, at present it is in India. In the Indonesia G20 summit, there was a meeting between India-China summit also. Bilateral talks were resolved. Balancing relationships. It means that, this is important. Japan, Australia, India, this grouping, they had, common understanding of certain issues. Similarly, Russia, India, China, they have certain issues. Aligning these issues, balancing these relationships, Russia, India, China, Japan, Australia, India, with the global issues, that needs to be balanced. Raising critical issues of being the regional leader. Global leader is one thing that India aspires to be. But first of all, we have to be an undisputed regional leader. Represent the global south, the voice. Of course, in terms of economic prowess, we are not able to counter China. But yes, on the basis of principles, on the basis of influencing the policies, soft power diplomacy, India definitely represents the global south. Bringing adversaries on the common platform, different kinds of, issues, whatever are there, it is an effective platform for the engagement. Now let's look at the presidencies transforming India's heft. Reinvigorated multilateralism. First time in the history of G20 also, first time the leaders agreed that the problems of 21st century, can only be solved with multilateral approach. Okay. Basically, we need to address through reinvigorated multilateralism. I have told you what is reinvigorated multilateralism. Multilateralism was always there. It's a part of the global order. Globalization without multilateralism was not even possible. But as I told you, nearshoring, the friendly countries are coming together for economic efficiency as well as the security, like peace and stability of the country. This is called reinvigorated multilateralism, which will also require the different kinds of reforms and international cooperation to happen. Engagement with global powers. This platform provides India this opportunity to directly engage with US. Already with US, India is, I2, U2, you can see Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, Quad, defense deals we are doing. We are engaging with US or Russia for that matter, China. So different global powers we are engaging. India's growing economic influence. India is the fastest growing major economy. And therefore, India has its influence, economic influence, what decisions India is taking. World Bank has appreciated India's way of doing financial inclusion through JAM Trinity, Aadhaar card, linkage with mobile. Resonate national interest with global interest. What are the different interests of India? For example, biofuel policy. Already India is promoting its biofuel, like into the petrol, we want to include ethanol blending. Similarly, biofuel policy, we want that global level biofuel policy should be there in the form of renewable energy or craving for life movement, lifestyle for environment, which India showcased in the Glasgow summit, then reiterated in the form of pro-planet people movement at the World Economic Forum also. So resonating national interest with global interest, aligning, both of them should be aligned. Or pragmatic, basically you can understand it as a pragmatic foreign policy. showcased India's soft power in the form of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This will give a roadmap for the development. We can explain about it, we can talk about it in detail. Actually, this is different from the right now, like human centric development we had been talking about. All the development was there to ease and comfort the human being. India's Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is about biocentric development, and not just biocentric, including each and everything of this planet, whole planet. In this planet, living and non-living thing, everything is included. Right now, although the world order is moving from human-centric development to biocentric development, but the India's soft power diplomacy is about, we are talking about everything on this planet, whether living or non-living thing. We need to protect. The whole thing is made up of this planet. One earth, one family, one future, in all things on this earth. Voice of Global South, you all understand that it has been, reflected that India always was very enthusiastic about representing the Global South voice, and the inclusion of African Union is a testament to it. Climate change, we all know how India is pushing the climate change, and moreover, CBDR, combined but differentiated responsibilities of it. Now let's understand what are the outcomes of 2023 summit. Okay. Admittance of African Union. The outcome was, first outcome, most important outcome is admittance of African Union. Because here now more representative G20. More representative, by that I want to say that more representative of developing nations. Okay. Second big thing was India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, connecting through railway lines and sea lines. This is basically a transport corridor. We are building a corridor. Understand one more important thing. This is important for your prelims as well as mains examination. Somewhere through the INSTC, International North-South Transit Corridor, or Ashgabat Agreement, we are countering the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative of the China also. So this is an infrastructure project that will build more connectivity towards Europe through Middle East. India also wants its inroads into the Middle East. Global Biofuels Alliance. Here it is led by India, US and Brazil. Understanding the pressing needs of energy. We want, more diversification of energy, not just dependent on the fossil fuels, but from the renewable source or sustainable source of energy via biofuels. Okay. Global renewable energy capacity. G20 nations have committed that they are going to tripling the renewable energy capacity, or 3x by 2030. Another outcome related to the cryptocurrency, the talk of the town. Cryptocurrencies, how it bar, ban or regulate. These are the three things in terms of, how the regulator thinks about it. Whether we should, initially they were banned, then it was being regulated, it was being taxed also. So all the countries, they have said that we should, coordinate and develop a comprehensive policy, very comprehensive policy based on the cryptocurrency, or how the other countries, basically the central banks, to address this problem. As I told you, if these cryptocurrencies are not being regulated, they will provide a situation of economic anarchism. Till now, we all understood political anarchism, but it may lead to economic anarchism. India-US collaboration was a big outcome. They have said that they will diversify their collaboration, not just up to the defense deals, but in different sectors such as space also, artificial intelligence also. More diversification into defense deals, space and artificial intelligence. These has been the major outcomes of 2023 summit. Now let's look at the major highlights of the New Delhi Declaration. Here understand that major highlights means what has been the discussions. Okay, major points of discussion. The most important point here you should understand G20 satellite mission. G20 satellite mission, India has proposed to launch a G20 satellite for environment resilience and understanding the different aspects of the environment, particularly for South Asian nations. For South Asian nations, G20 satellite mission, India has proposed it. Okay. About Ukraine war, as we know, we have discussed about it. Basically, Russia was being cornered from all the Western powers. But yes, that provided a table, G20 provided a table for bringing Russia also into it and understanding that territorial sovereignty, territorial integrity of any country is very important. Being even a permanent member, having a veto power into UNSC, it cannot invade a country. And in the G20 communique, the Prime Minister clearly said that this is not an era of war. This is not an era of war. Okay, global economic situation. Here G20, G20 2023, G20 2023 financial inclusion action plan, for accelerating financial inclusion between the industries and MSMEs, how to include them also. This has been the into global economic situation. For the trade, it said that we need to map the global value chain. We need to map the global value chain, mapping of global value chain, so that we can understand what are the vulnerabilities and what are the risks into these whole value chain, so that we can build a resilient infrastructure, resilient value chain that does not affect the economic security, about international taxation, coordinating the international level fiscal structures also, that modernization of taxation laws, creating a more inclusive world order. Here into this more inclusive, basically understanding the problem of refugees. They reaffirmed their commitment that they will resolve this problem of refugees or migrant workers. Food and energy security, hunger, malnutrition, and health. Here you understand one thing, the coordination, the most important, there is a G20 Deccan principles. Okay, understand this word for the examination. You must write this in the mains examination. They reaffirm their commitment for the G20 Deccan principles. G20 Deccan principles are about food security. Okay, food security or hunger, malnutrition, dealing with the health architecture also. Money laundering, okay, or tracking corruption. These two issues, money laundering, tracking corruption, these problems are dealt with FATF. They need to coordinate with FATF, Financial Action Task Force, and Globe, operationalizing the Globe network also, that will resolve the problem of money laundering. These are the threats basically. Green Development Pact, unanimously all the countries into G20 accepted this Green Development Pact. What is, there are two principles into Green Development Pact. One is Chennai principle, another is Deccan principle. Chennai principle is about blue economy. Understand, right? This down somewhere. Chennai principles. Here I am talking about this green Chennai principles is about blue economy, and Deccan principles. Deccan principle is about food security. Getting this point? DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure. It is a voluntary initiative from different countries. They can take up as digital public infrastructure. Okay, digitization of the world. India is already way ahead. In whole of the world, the cheapest data is available in India. Data penetration has increased. Reforming multilateral development banks, of course, it will be in their talk of the different countries. Multilateral banks should engage. G20 satellite we have discussed. They said that terrorism is the biggest threat for the economic security right now. Therefore, we must tackle this menace also. Into the climate change, they already have set the target for tripling the renewable energy. Also, they said that newer commitment should come. New commitments from the developed nation should come for contributing climate financing. Bigger issue is about climate finance. Newer commitment should come with the floor of $100 billion. $100 billion. Understand that this should not be the ceiling, but this should be the floor. This should not be the ceiling. We want more than $100 billion commitment from the developed countries for climate finance. You're getting this point. So these has been the major highlights of the development. So you can use this as arguments and substantiate them, whatever questions are coming in the examination. Now let's understand what are the challenges. Understand that there are deeper things, which led to the challenges of G20. First is polarization of interest. Polarization of interest. Russia-Ukraine war, if we talk about Russia-Ukraine war, this has polarized the interest. On one hand, it gave strategic position to China. But it supported Russia into it. Okay. Moreover, for the US, what happened? The expansion of NATO. Expansion of NATO. The recent country to become the member of NATO, Finland. So polarization of interest is happening, and both the countries, whether US or whether China or whether Russia we are talking about, they are part of the G20 only. Into the grouping itself, polarization of interest is happening. Differences on Russia-Ukraine war. The joint statement of the G20 that was issued here, it was written that war in Ukraine. Whereas the statement in the Bali Declaration was war against Ukraine. This is a war against Ukraine, not war in Ukraine. So this is something, differences on the Russia-Ukraine war. Some people do not want to go against some countries, against the Russia itself. Informal structure. It does not have any permanent secretariat. No treaty to back its decisions for the implementation of it. So also informal structure, what happens that it becomes difficult and inefficient as an organization to monitor the results that they have decided, that they have shown commitments. No legal framework, no permanent secretariat, difficulty in reaching consensus. Difficulty in reaching consensus. Basically what happens, G20 has wide range of countries from developed to the developing countries right now, because African Union is now also a part of it. So how do we come to the consensus? Whether it be climate financing, okay, whether it be modernization of taxation laws. On one hand, European Union is coming up with MAT, but are the countries able to pick it up? This is difficult. Even in 2008 crisis, although this body was formed, they did not come up with a coordinated response. Absence of enforcement mechanism, same problem, because they do not have a legal framework, they do not have a treaty, and therefore they lack legitimacy and accountability. G20 lack legitimacy and accountability. Influence decision making of smaller countries. Smaller countries are at the peril of the decisions, commitments taken by the G20 nations. If we talk about India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, this may create a rift between India and its neighborhood China, and it will see it as an alternative to OBOR or Belt and Road Initiative of China. That India is more tilting towards Europe, more tilting towards Middle East, more tilting towards US right now. Biofuel alliance. India is itself suffering from the problems of, deep hunger crisis, deep malnutrition. Okay. Super high or hyper food inflation. Food inflation. Sometimes the prices of tomatoes or potatoes or onions are skyrocketing. So what happens that the arable land, which cannot be converted for the production of ethanol, for mixing it with the biofuel, we want to ensure food security first of all, as per the National Food Security Act 2013. This is our prerogative, this is our prerogative. But it seems more like that US is more interested in the biofuel policy, and India, to appease US, is aligning with this biofuel alliance. This is just a criticism, but yes, India does want to increase its sustainable mode of fuel consumption and diversifying its energy basket. Climate change. Something concrete is not happening. As I have told you in the beginning itself, the block as a block we have discussed. Yes, the 80% of global GDP it represents, 75% of global trade it represents, 2/3 of population it represents. But you understand one more important fact about G20. It also represents 80% of all the global CO2 emissions. CO2 global emissions. And this is not a very good fact to be proud of. This is a challenge that yes, these are the countries which are emitting most of the carbon dioxide. This is a challenge. And here climate finance, whether it be Paris climate deal, we are talking about the commitments of the developed nation, or whether it be G20, where the floor itself has been fixed at $100 billion. Now let's look at what could be the way forward for this problem. First step is formalization of G20. By the formalization, it means that it should have a clear vision statement, clear-cut objectives should be there. It should have a permanent secretariat so that we can have continuity in the assessment process, in the implementation process. Formalization of G20, very important. Then is, in 2011, there was a proposal of global financial transaction tax. Whatever transactions are happening on that, tax will be there. Global financial transaction tax, and that money could be used to finance the climate change. That needs to be reviewed. From that also we can fund the overall global climate change. Countering terrorism, expanding base erosion and profit shifting, BEPS, the financial scams that are happening, that can be curbed by the expansion of the base erosion and profit shifting framework. This question was asked by UPSC in prelims examination. BEPS, it's an initiative of OECD countries. Okay, we need to expand the network of it, that we can work with it. Moreover, strengthening and coordinating with, fifth point you can take as coordination with international organizations, just like IMF, World Bank, World Trade Organization, WHO. So these international organizations, we can collaborate with them in form of engagement groups on the sidelines that will resolve certain problems. Moreover, for the trade, we need to push for more open, stable and transparent rule-based trade in the WTO. That is more important over here. While we were mapping the global value chain architecture, but yes, we should push for rules also. Use of dialogue and diplomacy for various conflicts, whether it be on terrorism, whether it be on Ukraine issues. And hence, in the conclusion, you can move ahead and say that India's presidency is a milestone, is a watershed movement in the G20 that has moved from a protocol-driven G20 to people-driven G20, from protocol-driven G20 to people's G20. And by putting people at the forefront, at the center, India's presidency may well turn out to be the Setu of solidarity. It may turn out to be the Setu of solidarity that can bridge the increasingly fragmented world that can bridge the increasingly fragmented world and steer it to one earth, one family, one future. So guys, that was all from here for G20. For notes, join our Telegram channel at Sunya Notes. What happens that here the book, Sunya Books, for GS1, GS2 and GS3, GS4. What happens that into all of these books, we are constantly updating our current affairs, the mains articles. What happens that when we are preparing for this examination, the general studies, these all things are thematic into the international relations, the latest development, the most updated form of it will be provided to you. This topic belongs to GS2. So if you have that Sunya book, GS1, GS2, GS3, and through these lectures, you can understand the topics in detail, and into this books, these articles are already there, and latest updation, you will be provided with the link that is updated. So thank you and keep watching.